Welcome to This Week in South Carolina. I'm Gavin Jackson. This week, a historic first for our state. The South Carolina Senate voted to remove State Treasurer Curtis Loftus from office after senators said he violated the state constitution by willfully neglecting his duties over his handling of the $1.8 billion accounting error that has plagued his office for years. Loftus said he only found out about the discrepancy in early 2023 when the previous Comptroller General's double counting error of $3.5 billion came to light. This despite Loftus's staff knowing about this problem since at least 2016 due to the conversion to a new state accounting system. There is no money missing, no fraud was detected, but there was also no surplus of money to be spent or returned to taxpayers, despite previous claims. On Monday, the Senate chamber became a hearing room for two senators to present the facts of an extensive investigation, and for the treasurer and his legal team to present their case, as well as for the 46-member body to question both sides. A two-thirds majority was needed and was surpassed with a 33-8 vote, sending the matter to the House, where with 6 legislative days left in session, it's unclear if it will take up the matter it's deferred to the Senate on. Now, before we talk with Senator Larry Grooms, who has overseen the Senate investigation, let's return to the Senate with a focus on what Treasurer Loftus and his team had to say in his defense. Following the presentation by Senators Grooms and Goldfinch, the treasurer and his team presented their case for 3 hours on Monday, with attorney Debbie Barbier leading off and focusing on due process.
Embedded in both the United States Constitution and in our state constitution, due process is not a suggestion. It is not discretionary. It is an obligation, a constitutional command that ensures that no citizen, no elected official, no resident of this state is deprived of liberty, property, or reputation without a fair and an impartial process. We can all agree, I think we can all agree, that the standards we set for ourselves in the United States of America exceed that of Egypt, Pakistan, Burma, Thailand, Zimbabwe. These are examples of instances where leaders are ousted or politically neutralized without any semblance of due process.
Loftus also read remarks in his defense, presenting a coherent and concise picture of the issue in a way that senators later said they wish he had first presented to them in previous hearings.
The committee has alleged that I knowingly made false statements regarding the now widely discussed $1.8 billion accounting error, claiming I knowingly misrepresented it as cash in Skis Fund 0993. Let me be clear. That allegation is false. When I answered questions on April the 2nd, I relied upon documentation from the Comptroller General, the state's chief accountant, the state auditor, and our external audit firm, Clifton, Larson, and Allen, all of whom stated that the $1.8 billion was real cash and appropriately recorded in Fund 0993. These statements were consistent with the state's financial records, including the annual comprehensive financial report and the previous Senate subcommittee report of 2023. I answered in good faith with the best information possible. That information, as we've since learned from AlixPartners, was inaccurate. But my reliance on the Comptroller General's letter was appropriate and expected. As the state's treasurer, I'm entitled to rely on those financial records, including when we issue hundreds of millions of dollars of bonds and managing the $52 billion last night of public money. So clearly, relying on those records in a subcommittee hearing was appropriate. There was no intent to deceive, and furthermore, there was no reason to deceive.
Following two other attorneys, the Senate presenters rebutted several claims, including how civil trial legal requirements aren't applicable to this hearing. 16 senators then peppered both sides with questions.
Treasurer Loftus, I have 3 questions. You described this as an accounting error. Do you admit you made a mistake? Question number 2. Mr. Eubanks gave a very compelling timeline about how this all happened. Why didn't you tell us that years ago? Was it because you didn't know or you didn't want us to know? Number 3, if you did not neglect your duty, why are we now under SEC investigation that's going to cost us tens of millions of dollars?
The SEC is, the reason the SEC is here is because, and I have a letter that was sent to the Attorney General, was sent to the Comptroller General's office. He turned it over to the Governor and the Attorney General. And it said that the SEC has a non-public investigation of the state of South Carolina in reference to the overstatement of cash by $3.5 billion in the annual comprehensive annual report, ACFR. It has nothing to do with the state treasurer. And while it has been stated affirmatively over and over and over by the presenters, I'm not mentioned anywhere in there. Several offices have been interviewed. We haven't. Yes, sir.
You made a mistake?
Well, we make mistakes all the time. You got to tell me which one.
You admit it.
Well, which mistake you?
Well,
I'm not trying to be coy. There's about.
All right. Well, your Mr. Eubanks gave as great an explanation of the timeline as I've ever heard, but I've been waiting years to hear that explanation. And so my question is, did you not know that's what happened, or did you not want us to know that's what happened? Because that, to me, is, did you make a mistake? The mistake being either you didn't understand it, or you did understand it and you didn't want us to understand it.
I assume you're talking about the creation of the 0993 account?
Yes.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of
I
facets.
mean, we've been waiting for a long time to hear what he told us in about 10 minutes today.
Hindsight's pretty good. Okay, so the 0993 account was part of the conversion. It was a massive conversion. It was an ongoing process. The committee has it stopped on one day. That wasn't how it worked. We knew it would be a long-term process. I never knew that the 0993 had $1.8 billion in it, or it didn't have the $1.8 billion. It had $1.6 billion in appropriated dollars, which we don't deal with. And I found out about that in February of 2023.
In the House, Majority Leader Davey Hyatt told reporters it's unclear what will happen with 6 legislative days left over the next 2 weeks.
Right now he's the treasurer, state of South Carolina. The Senate made it very clear that they believe he should be removed with their vote yesterday. But we'll take a look at it as a caucus. We're fixing to go into caucus now, and that's the first item on what we'll talk about as soon as we get over there, and we'll see where we go from there. But we will have some statement before too much longer.
Joining me now is Berkeley Republican Senator Larry Grooms, whose subcommittee investigated the $1.8 billion accounting error in the Treasurer's office. Senator Grooms, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
So a lot has happened since we've last spoken, including this hearing that took place in the Senate on Monday. And in our opening segment, we just heard from the state treasurer, his defense team, and questions from Senator Brad Hutto. But we've discussed this issue with you and Senator Goldfinch on the show before, so we don't have to necessarily rehash too much of it. But tell us what was the core of your argument when you all presented that case to the Senate on Monday.
There currently exist $1.8 billion in errors, the cumulative errors on the Treasury books. The treasurer is the guy in charge of the books. That's his main jobs. And the books are not accurate, they are not complete. The treasurer is responsible. Whether he says he knew about the error in 2023 or whether he knew about the error in 2016 is immaterial. He's the guy in charge of the Treasury. And there are serious hundreds of millions of dollars in errors in the Treasury books. And he tries to pass the buck on to somebody else saying, it's not my problem, the devil made me do it.
And we saw the Comptroller General, Richard Ekstrom, resign back in 2023. We saw that George Kennedy, the former auditor, resign this year too. So if people have been affected by this error that's affected not just the Treasurer's office, but the Comptroller General's books too. But we're seeing the Treasurer still defiant the situation despite this error still being pervasive. And also him making claims in the past that this money was real and that he was making interest on this money. A lot of people thought they were gonna get money back or that you guys could spend more money. That wasn't the case. So how is there still trust in him if it doesn't seem like he even knows what's on his own books?
Well, clearly, from the Senate perspective, there's not trust in him. While there were 8 members of the Senate that voted not to remove him from office, the rest of the Senate did. And those 8, I'm sure they all believed that there was sufficient wrongdoing but maybe it didn't rise to the level of removal. So there's universal agreement. There's incompetence within the Office of State Treasurer. The question is, what do you do about it? And our only remedy to hold someone accountable is Section 3 removal. And I had another senator yesterday just asking me, well, what can we do to make him comply with the law? What can we do to ensure that he does the proper reconciliations that the Office of State Auditor in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2016, 2017, and 2018 said he wasn't doing? You're not doing proper reconciliations. The internationally known forensic auditing team, AlixPartners, says the state treasurer does not do proper reconciliation with the state books. The accounting consulting firm, Malden and Jenkins, says in their report the state treasurer's office is not doing proper reconciliations. And when you don't reconcile your checkbook to your bank balance, you're liable to make errors. And we know the treasurer's office made errors, 1.8 billion of them. And we don't know how many more errors there are. And you're not going to know unless the state treasurer does proper reconciliations, as everyone has now looked at and said, you're not doing them and you need to do them. So how do you make him do them? When he stands on the Senate floor in defiance by saying, I'm not going to change anything I'm doing. I'm not going to do that. He actually said, I'm not following the law and I'm not going to.
So try and remove him, but he's still going to be in office even if there's no removal taking place.
There were some that said, Grooms, look away, look away. He's very popular on Facebook. He's got a good social media crowd. There's some folks that really, really like him. And the thing is, I really, really liked him up until about 3 years ago when things started not looking right, when we began to ask questions. Then I became very aware that he was not being truthful. And then the investigation continued. I'm looking for the truth. But others are saying, look away. But I'm not a look away Republican.
And I was going to say to that effect, did it have to get to this point? I know you're saying you didn't want to look away, but I mean, even when a lot of these errors were coming out, could it have been remedied before? I mean, your subcommittee took, what, 27 and a half hours of testimony, 11 meetings or something like that?
27 and a half hours of
did it have to get to this point?
Record testimony. It didn't have to get to this point. That's the central part of this. The not doing proper reconciliations. If they had just reconciled the books, as the state auditor said they needed to do, even back in 2016, the error would have come to light. They would have fixed the problem. But they have not done the reconciliations since 2016, as they should. And they still don't do them.
And that was a lot because of the transition to that new accounting system in the state and a lot of the double counting situations.
It led to that. There was a transition from the old legacy system to the new system. And while inputting the information into the new system, that's when thousands of incorrect entries were made that ended up totaling $1.8 billion. And then to make the balance work, to force a balance, this fund was created, a fund without cash. And we didn't know what the fund was. We're looking at the books. I'm looking at the books. I see this anomaly. The new Comptroller General saw the anomaly right off the bat. Comptroller Gaines looks at, says, this account's supposed to have zero balance, and it's got $1.8 billion. I don't know what it is. State Treasury, can you tell me? And Treasurer says, I don't know, maybe it's real cash. It is real cash. The former Comptroller General said it was real cash, and because I told him it was real cash, he told me it was real cash, so it's real cash.
In the end, it's still taxpayer dollars, whether it's real or not, so it's still worrisome to know that it wasn't actually real at the same time. But we're talking about willfully neglecting his duty and not knowing what's happening in his own office when we have emails showing that his staff knew about it. Some members on his staff knew about it back in 2016, and he alleges that he didn't know about it until 2023. I guess you can't dispel him. You haven't seen any evidence otherwise, but what does that say about his office if they're not willing to bring that problem to him or if they're covering for him? I mean, what was the situation with that?
Well, think about it like this. Anyone that has a job works anywhere. If you're dealing with money and you make errors, such egregious errors, totaling thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's brought to light, is your boss just going to say, well, that's okay. I know you made these errors and I know you covered it up and I know you're going to continue to make errors, but that's okay with me because you got a really good Facebook page. That doesn't happen in real life, but for some reason, that's happening right now inside state government.
little worrisome there too. When we talk about how this vote worked out, we talk about that defense happening on Monday. Some speculate that that hearing could have actually gone in his favor, or that y'all didn't have the votes per se, the 31 votes necessary to remove him. But then his third attorney, Johnny Gasser, made some comments towards Republican senators specifically about how they could be primaried essentially in the upcoming elections. It's years away, but still. Do you think that helps sway some people to come back on y'all's side in terms of, your senators, you're not really prone to being threatened in your own chamber?
Well, it was a very interesting defense. Since we can't defend the indefensible, we're going to try to scare you. We're going to let you know, if you don't vote right, we're coming to get you. Asking the members of the Senate to look away. Look away. Don't look at the evidence, because if you look at the evidence, you may make a vote. And if we're not happy with that vote, we're coming after you.
You could say maybe it's similar to what you've maybe heard or anecdotally know about the Treasurer's Office too?
Threatening members of the General Assembly is probably not the best defense they could have made.
Mm-hmm. Or the due process defense, and comparing him to the likes of Robert Mugabe from Zimbabwe, who didn't have due process when he was ousted as a tyrant. So a little concerning comparison.
Yeah, well, we're not proposing that we execute anybody.
Mm-hmm. But also, due process wasn't necessary in this case either. This wasn't an actual civil trial, different rules, different procedures at play here.
And this has happened once before in our state's history, only once. And it's not impeachment. The Article 15, Section 3 of the Constitution provides this remedy. This is the backstop. Mm-hmm. If everything you do, if you know you have a constitutional officer that's not performing his job, where there's a level of incompetence, a high level of incompetence, and you say, there's trouble in the Treasury, we want you to fix it. And then he looks at you defiantly and says, I'm not going to fix it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Every turn, we tried to get the treasurer to take responsibility and try to correct the problems on the state books, and he wouldn't do it, still refuses to do so. So it gets to a point where the last remedy is a Section 3 removal, and that's where we are. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate that he has not taken responsibility. It's unfortunate that he says he's not going to do the proper reconciliations. It's unfortunate for the people of South Carolina. It's unfortunate that we had to have this hearing, only the second time in our state's history.
And again, that's in the Constitution, allows for y'all to do that. That's your right. The Constitution it's public, it's passed by the people. But there was also talk about y'all disenfranchising that vote to get him in office. But again, like you said, that's your right to be able to do that. You're empowered to do so.
It's more than a right. It's a duty. Mm-hmm. When we see misfeasance and malfeasance, it's our job as legislators to try to correct that. And the last step in that, if all else fails, I think we have a duty to look to the Constitution. What remedy do we have? And that's the only remedy left to us. And we did our duty because he didn't do his.
Senator, can you give me some idea of the mood on the Senate floor? Again, that vote was 33-8. It was about a 10-hour-long day on Monday in the Senate. That was wrapped up. It was getting late. We saw the Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey going around kind of polling folks, seeing where the votes were. You guys were pretty insistent the entire time over the past few weeks that you did have the votes to get this done. But did anything surprise you? Did you think you'd have more? Did you think there were some people that didn't get as swayed as possible? What was the vibe on the floor?
I believe that he would probably have 6 senators vote with him, and he ended up having 8. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't too far off on my vote count. Mm-hmm. And I can read the Senate pretty well. And to say that this is some sort of power grab, that we're trying to take the money that he has for our own personal gain, is completely ridiculous. The money entrusted to the treasurer is done so by acts of the General Assembly. The Treasury would have no funds if it weren't for previous acts of the General Assembly. All the money that's held in trust by the state treasurer has a particular purpose. It's not like it's free money that we can just grab.
Y'all appropriated
it. We've appropriated it, or it's been collected through fees. It could be federal pass-through money. There's anywhere between $50 and $70 billion held in cash of taxpayer money. And if the treasurer had discretion in it, why is he hoarding $70 billion? Why doesn't he send it back to the taxpayer? That would be my question. Mm-hmm. If you actually buy his argument that he's protecting that money, I think the money's best left with the taxpayer instead of us taking it in the first place. And yesterday, the Senate just passed our version of the budget that has the largest tax breaks in state history. We have more taxpayer money going back this year to the taxpayer than ever before, and we cut the tax rate from 6.2% down to 6%. So people can keep their money in their account instead of sending it to the state so the treasurer can keep it in his.
Senator, we have yet to get clarity from the House on where this goes. And as of our taping Thursday morning, that resolution has yet to be read across the desk in the House and assigned to a committee. The House has deferred to y'all for all the investigative work on this matter. Would it be negligent of them not even to take it up at this point, especially when you guys have shown that you don't have confidence in the treasurer and you've done all this work and then it's TBD in the House right now?
Well, when the case for incompetence in office is made clearly, when there's no dispute about that, when there's no dispute about certain statutes that's been violated by the treasurer, I think it would be a shame if the House took the attitude that we're just going to look the other way. We know there's wrongdoing, but we're going to look the other way. That would be unfortunate.
And you expect to get some clarity at some point? It's from the House?
I believe we'll hear something from the House shortly.
And if they don't take this up, even if they do take it up and they don't remove him, what's the next step? What could you guys do? Could you just try and, again, maybe get the constitutional amendment to get his position not to be statewide elected, but also appointed by the governor? I mean, other things you could pursue if this doesn't happen?
Well, the earliest a constitutional amendment can be before the people will be in 2026 when the Office of Treasurer and the Office of Comptroller General will be on the ballot. So if the people decide that it should be appointed, it wouldn't be until 2030 before that could happen. And so that's not a remedy right now. But the resolution remains alive. The House of Representatives can take it up at any point. It only takes them a few hours to bring that resolution up to the floor for a vote. So that mechanism could be triggered at any time.
And I asked you about this after the vote on Monday, but what more needs to be done here? I mean, like we're saying, if they don't take this up, I mean, does the SEC, which still has an open investigation into this matter, do they have to come back with a damning report or say, we're going to fine you this X amount of money? What more needs to be done for you to hope that the House will actually act on this?
Well, I'm not sure the timing of the SEC when they will complete their investigation. We've been told that the investigation could take a year or another 2 years. They're very thorough in what they do. They do many, many interviews, and they look in many, many areas where this thing can go. So we're talking a year or 2 years.
Okay.
But in the interim, we still have a treasurer that does not do proper reconciliations. We know of $1.8 billion in errors. We don't know how many more errors there are. And until he starts doing his job, the people, I don't know how they can have trust, at least with this treasurer.
What about credit ratings too? I mean, I know we talk about that often, and I know there's no money missing, there's no fraud detected here, but do you think that, when you hear from credit raters that they still have confidence in our state if we have a treasurer who's got these errors on his books?
The three major credit rating agencies, they're paying close attention to what we do. They know we have a problem. They know that three financial executives had a hand in creating the problem. We know that Comptroller General Richard Ekstrom and State Auditor George Kennedy did the honorable thing and resigned their positions. But another troubled child is still in office, who's still at the center of our books not being correct. They know that, they're looking at that. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to correct that problem before our credit rating is dinged in some fashion, which would then cost the taxpayers even more millions and millions of dollars in higher interest fees.
And are you concerned in any way that if the House was to move forward and if they were actually to get a 2/3 vote to remove him from office, that you would have to have a plan in place at that point pretty much immediately so you could make sure that the treasurer didn't have access to maybe data systems, computer systems, especially in light of what we almost saw him do last year in terms of publishing sensitive financial data publicly that could have led to crippling devastation of our accounts?
Well, in his own words, cyber thieves could cripple our state. That was his words. Publicly exposing the architecture of treasury accounts so that cyber thieves could receive our money. That was reckless and dangerous, but yet he did that.
So concerned that it could happen if it gets removed.
I have many concerns, but he can't do that all on his own.
Okay.
And the employees of the state treasury's office, there's some really good folks that work there, and I don't think they would do anything willingly to hurt our state. And that was made clear even after last year when the treasurer said he was going to do that. We let it be known that following orders does not excuse you from breaking the law.
And Senator, with 30 seconds left, you mentioned the budget that just got passed this week by the Senate. You mentioned the tax cuts, but can we talk about transportation needs and hopefully, I guess, for some folks, they want to see more money for bridges in that budget. You guys didn't put as much in. What about the needs in that budget? Do you think that there might be some room for change in conference?
Well, the chairman of the Finance Committee, I think he ran a really good budget hearing. We've been working on it all year, but this senator right here would have preferred to have seen more money going to the Department of Education.
Transportation.
I'm sorry, transportation. Yes, we took care of education. We didn't take care of transportation as I would have liked. But I'm one of 46. I would have preferred that we would have outdone the House and put $300 million to replace our bridges or to help escalate the bridge replacements.
There's still time. We'll see what happens. That's Berkeley Republican Senator Larry Grims. Thank you, sir, as always.
Thank you.
And that's it for us this week. For South Carolina TV, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.